So welcome everyone. I'm Clara Galan from Remind 101, and I'm joined here today by Todd Nesloney, who's TCEA Classroom Teacher of the Year, co-host of Edu All-Stars, and Teacher Advisory Board member and blogger for Remind 101. So welcome, Todd. Thanks so much for joining us today.
No, I appreciate being asked. Thank you.
Yeah, so I really loved your last two posts on our blog about how you flipped your project-based learning classroom and great ways of keeping parents connected to it. I really think there are a lot of teachers who can learn from your experiences and hopefully some strategies to implement in their own classrooms. So let's get started. So for those who are tuning in today, Todd, what is a flipped classroom model?
Well, the easiest way to describe it is that the typical way that a teacher teaches is they stand up and lecture and send the kids home to do homework. A flipped classroom model takes that model and flips it. The way my class works is my kids go home and watch a brief instructional video that I've created about 5 to 7 minutes in length. And then when they come to class, they have that foundation built, so we just jump right into hands-on project-based learning.
Very cool. So what were some of the things that worked in your project-based learning classroom and some strategies that maybe didn't work?
Well, I definitely had to figure out how to meet the needs of my students who did not have the technology at home. And so we found a lot of creative avenues around that, from bringing in flash drives to burning DVDs to checking out our own technology for kids to use at home. I also had to learn that I had to be extremely flexible with project-based learning, because any of the time frames that I set up to exist didn't always play out. And so there were some projects that we had to stop midway through because the kids just weren't ready, and others that finished in a couple days when I had planned a few weeks. And so just learning that process is still something that I still am having to be flexible with.
So what were some of the things that engaged your students the most in class? Since I know that they're learning some of the content at home, were there specific strategies that you used to really get them up and moving during their collaborative time in class?
Well, we try to be very clear with our students and say that the videos are not meant for them to master the material. A lot of the parents and kids, when they come into a flipped classroom, think that that's what the video exists to do, because that's what the classroom used to exist to do. And so I have to let them know that the video just builds a foundation. It just gets us started with that information, and then what we do is we jump and build upon that in class. Kids like getting messy, kids like working with their hands, and they like to talk. And so my class is one where it's never quiet. Everything we do is group or peer work. They're constantly having to research and figure things out on their own. They're pushed, they're challenged. Sometimes there's tears, sometimes there's anger, but they end up learning it at a much deeper level than ever before. And in the end, they appreciate it much more, because I don't prepare my kids for an exam. I prepare them to learn the standards. And so if they learn the standards, they do well in the exam. And so we don't even mention an exam. That's taken out of the equation. We just focus on the learning and trying to make it as fun as possible.
Very cool. So are there some, how do you balance that in terms of some of the content that's learned at home? Is peer work really helpful for that when students come and maybe didn't get all of the material from the video? How do you kind of balance that out?
Well, when the kids come to class and we begin a project, if there were students who completely struggled with the video and didn't understand even a word, while the rest of the class is working on their project, I pull those kids into a small group and we talk about and discuss it. The other thing is I've had kids come to me flat out and say, you know, I'm just one of those students who likes lectures. I like listening to the teacher tell me the information. And so I'm able to pull them aside as well and just work with them and just kind of give them that face-to-face time before I put them back in their group. I also give random quizzes throughout projects. And so when I give a quiz and I see that there's a small group of students who just bombed the quiz, it means they're not getting it the way that I would hope they would be getting it. And so I pull them aside as well, and I'm able to pull the small groups and work with them on individualized needs instead of working with the whole class when the whole class doesn't all need the same thing.
Exactly. So that's a really good strategy for differentiating, it looks like,
exactly.
Different content. So I know that since there's a lot of material that's learned at home, how do you keep parents connected into what's happening in the classroom? So do you have any specific strategies or tools that you use?
Yeah, definitely. We use a lot of different tools to keep parents involved. We use, of course, Remind 101 to let them know about things that are coming up and videos that are due and projects and things like that. We have a class Instagram account that we use. We have a Facebook group. We have a class Twitter account. We have all of those different kinds of things, and I also provide a open house that parents can come to once a month, where they can come and just hang out with their kid and see exactly what's going on in our class.
Oh, that's awesome. So it sounds like you have a ton of parent involvement then from those different tools that you're using.
Yeah, and it's just it opens up the classroom and makes the parents trust this new model of teaching, so it doesn't feel like I'm trying to trick them or hide something. And I also blog almost weekly, a little less lately because of a bunch of other things, but I try to blog very often so the parents can also read that if they'd like to.
Great. So, I mean, it sounds like you have a lot of parents involved through online sources. Do you have students participating in different social media spaces as well to kind of keep that involvement in the classroom past class time?
Not really. My students aren't 13, and so just so I don't get in trouble for anything, I don't really push the social media for them to become active on it. Do they have Twitter accounts, Facebook accounts, Instagram accounts? Yes, I know because they all follow our class accounts, and they respond, but I try not to have any interaction with them on there just because of the whole they're not 13, and I don't feel like getting in trouble for anything. I will say my students are very active on Instagram. That's the one that they love doing, and that they love seeing the class photos and leaving comments on the class photos.
So it sounds like even though they don't have their personal accounts, there are still ways that you're teaching digital citizenship, like through having a class Twitter account and Instagram. And that
Yes,
sort of.
and students are put in charge of those accounts. So when you see a tweet come from our class Twitter account or you see a picture come from our Instagram, those are done by the students. They take a picture with my phone or write a tweet with my phone, and then I approve it before we send it out.
That's so cool. That really sounds like you're preparing them too for 21st century learning and digital citizenship skills. That's awesome.
Trying to.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you're doing a great job. So there are any like final pieces of advice you'd give to teachers? Because I know sometimes flipping your class can be a little bit daunting, especially with so many different elements. So are there any, like final tips or pieces of advice you'd want to give?
Some of the advice that I always give is when I started flipping, I jumped all in and flipped my entire curriculum from day one. Some teachers just aren't ready for that, and that's totally fine. So if you're nervous about flipping, find your favorite lesson that you like to teach and flip that. Because if it bombs, it's already your favorite, so you'll have easy ways to cover yourself and get everything back under control. And I also always advise people to get active on social media and find other educators to connect with and learn from. The only reason my flip class was successful is because I chose to be active on Twitter and follow the hashtag #FlipClass, and I connected with so many other educators and learned from their mistakes and their successes and built up a network of people that I could go to for help, and that would be there to provide me with ideas and resources. And so that was monumental in me achieving the success that I've had with my classroom.
Yeah, it sounds like being a connected educator helps so much. Just, even if you don't have those strategies within your classroom, you can learn from so many other teachers and kind of bounce ideas off of them.
Exactly.
So there's one last question I have for you. So how did you feel that the project-based learning aspect helped in your classroom? Because I know with flipping your classroom, the in-class time is so important for real deeper, authentic learning. So did you find that students really, went beyond the curriculum and did a lot of self-discovery into topics that they were interested in?
Yeah, I found that the conversations my students are at a much deeper level than I've ever seen in teaching traditionally in a classroom. They understand the concepts. They don't just know how to take a test. They actually understand what the math is behind the math, and so they know what they're doing. With the way we've done things in class too, they're also very good self-directed learners, and they seek out information rather than seeing the teacher as the end-all be-all of information. They're actively pursuing things on Twitter and Google and YouTube and trying to find their resources as if they would outside of the classroom. And so that's one of the biggest benefits in my eyes of project-based learning is I've been able to build up kids and give them real-life resources that they can take and use outside of the classroom, but that in the classroom help them be extremely successful.
Sounds like it becomes a real community of learners then too.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. So very cool. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Todd. It was great to have you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so for those of you tuning in, if you have any other questions for Todd or for any of us at Remind 101, you can reach Todd on Twitter at TechNinjaTodd and our team on Twitter at Remind 101. Read Todd's original posts on our blog, which you can find at blog.remind101.com, and I'll be sure to share the URLs and the links of this post. And please feel free to comment and share your ideas with us. So this is Clara Galan signing off with Remind 101, and tune in next week for some more great ed tech strategies for your classroom. Thanks.